Have you ever whispered to heaven in the silence of night, "Heal me or let me go"? Have you ever carried a pain so deep it felt like your soul was unraveling? This is not a story of death. It's a story of what waits beyond it. In today's video, you'll hear the true experience of a woman who was declared clinically dead, and what she saw on the other side will forever change the way you see life, loss, and the love of God. Stay with me, because once you hear what happened, nothing will ever be the same. My name is Rosemary, and for a long time, I truly believed I had the kind of life people dream of. I lived near the coast in Connecticut, married to the man I thought would grow old beside me. We had our routines, our shared cups of coffee, our inside jokes. Each night, I went to sleep with a quiet smile, thankful for the simple things. But all of that shattered on a gray Thursday afternoon. My husband came home early from work. He walked past me without a word. Then, without warning, he took his own life. That moment tore a hole through my heart so wide, I wasn't sure I'd ever feel whole again. For the next 2 years and 5 months, I wandered the world like a ghost inside my own skin. I lost our home. I slept in my car, on hospital beds, on couches that didn't belong to me. And every night, I would whisper to God 3 desperate prayers. Heal me, or let me go. No life review. No more impossible choices. I can't take another blow. It was a slow unraveling, a quiet disappearance. Then came the diagnosis, stage 2 cancer. Just like that, a new layer of fear folded over the old ones. I dropped to my knees in the bathroom, staring at the floor tiles through tears, and asked him, "Is this how you answer? Haven't I suffered enough?" But it wasn't over. After a routine biopsy, I started to bleed heavily. They sent me home, despite the warning signs. I stepped into the shower, trying to stop the bleeding, trying not to stain the hallway carpet. Even then, in the midst of panic, my mind went to hosting, to order, to cleaning up. But the truth was undeniable. I was dying. Blood wouldn't stop flowing. My vision began to blur. My legs weakened. And in the middle of that surreal moment, a verse floated into my mind. 1 Corinthians 10:13. God will provide a way out. I thought, maybe. This is my way out. But then something inside of me pushed back. A quiet fire, a memory of all the people who had fought to keep me alive. I stumbled out of the shower, barely able to speak. 2 friends were in the living room. I clutched the towel to my chest and whispered, "Call 911. I'm dying." They rushed me to a small emergency clinic. But there, the errors continued. They gave me morphine, a critical mistake when you're losing blood. My heart rate plummeted. Blood pressure dropped to 32/25. I was declared clinically dead. And yet, something happened that no machine could explain. My friend later told me that my eyes suddenly opened. I sat up slightly on the hospital gurney, as if called by something greater than gravity. Then, I raised both arms upward, like a child reaching for a parent. And I whispered words that no one in the room could understand, words that didn't come from this world. Then, I collapsed. That was the moment the old Rosemary, broken, exhausted, grieving, ceased to exist. But what came next was the beginning of something new, something no one was prepared for. Not the doctors, not my friends, not even me. Something that would defy everything we think we know about death, about the soul, and about the presence of God. Subscribe to our channel and comment your city plus amen to receive a prayer in our next video. It felt like waking up in reverse. There was no light, no ceiling, no sound. Just an instant, one clean, sharp moment, and I was no longer in the room. no longer in the body that had collapsed moments before. I wasn't floating above myself like in the movies. I was simply somewhere else. Or maybe, more accurately, I was nowhere and everywhere all at once. The first thing I noticed was the silence, but it wasn't empty. It was alive. A velvety darkness wrapped around me, not cold or frightening, but warm and sacred. It was like stepping into the softest black silk, woven with memory and meaning. I could feel this space, breathing. Not with lungs, but with something older and deeper. Each pulse seemed to say, "You're safe now." My senses hadn't disappeared. They had sharpened. It was like removing heavy gloves from your hands and suddenly realizing you can feel everything. The boundaries that once defined me were gone. I wasn't arms or legs or skin anymore. I was thought. I was awareness. I was soul, and I was not alone. I sensed them before I saw anything. Beings. Gentle. Loving. Familiar in a way I couldn't explain. They didn't have faces or names, but I knew them. Not like you know someone from a photograph. More like you remember someone from a dream you didn't know you were dreaming. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence was the language. It wrapped around me like an embrace from the inside out. I felt seen, not just for who I had been in life, but for who I had always been. The real me. The one that existed before trauma, before loss, before pain wrote its name across my chest. There was no fear, no shame, no judgment. Only peace. It wasn't the peace of silence, or the absence of chaos. It was the presence of something holy, like warm sunlight on your skin after a long, hard winter. And then, the memories began. Not the ones I had carried with sorrow, not the regrets or the mistakes. What returned to me were fragments of kindness, moments I had forgotten. The time I gave my scarf to a shivering woman on a train platform. The day I smiled at a cashier who had clearly been crying. The way I once held my husband's hand while he slept, just to remind myself that love was real. Those memories, those simple human moments, began to glow around me like fireflies in the dark. Each one pulsed with meaning, as if the universe was whispering, "This is what mattered. This is what remains." It was then that I realized something beautiful. Nothing is wasted. No act of love, no word of comfort, no tear shed and compassion disappears. They echo. They live on in ways we cannot see, until we're finally in the place where all things are seen. And in that moment, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt a sacred presence with you, in a moment of pain or beauty? Share your experience below. The air, or whatever surrounded me, began to change. The velvet darkness began to shimmer, like water touched by moonlight. I felt myself drifting gently upward. No effort, no resistance, just grace. The way autumn leaves float down from trees, but in reverse. Then came the light. Not sudden or blinding, but slow, deliberate. It came from ahead, but also from within. It didn't just illuminate, it understood. It knew me, welcomed me, cherished me. I could feel it smiling. And then, behind me, just to the left, a presence. Not like the others. This one was vast, immense. Not frightening, but commanding in its silence, like standing in front of a cathedral that breathes. Every fiber of me wanted to turn and look. So I did. And without speaking, I asked the only question that mattered. Who are you? The answer came not in words, but in understanding. It bloomed in my chest like 1,000 roses opening at once. You, Rosemary, are the image and the likeness. I am the original. The words weren't spoken. They were. They echoed through the marrow of my soul, and every truth I had ever questioned finally made sense. I wasn't separate. I wasn't broken. I wasn't alone. I was part of him, of it, of all that is. And just when I thought I could not take in any more beauty, something appeared. A door, tall, luminous, without hinges or locks, just a threshold, waiting. What lay beyond it pulsed with eternity. But before I could step forward, something else, something unexpected, was about to call me back. I stood before the door, or perhaps I should say, my soul stood before it. There was no fear, no hesitation, only an overwhelming sense of readiness. I knew, with a knowing that didn't require thought, that beyond this glowing threshold was home. Not the home I had known in Connecticut with beige walls and quiet dinners, but the true one. The origin. The place I had been made for, long before I ever took my first breath. The light surrounding the door shimmered like golden mist. It wasn't static. It pulsed, like it was breathing along with the heartbeat of God himself. The presence beside me, that vast, sacred awareness, said nothing. But I felt its love expanding, as if to say, you are free to choose. And then, it happened. Without warning, I was no longer standing before the door. I hadn't moved, yet suddenly I was somewhere else. Not in my body, but in a vision so real it wrapped around me like a second skin. I saw a woman. She was sitting alone in a dimly lit hospital room, her head buried in her hands. Her body trembled with sobs, not small, graceful cries, but deep, earth-shaking ones. Her pain was thick, almost physical. She rocked gently, whispering something over and over through her tears. I promised her. I promised she wouldn't die. And I lost her. I lost her. It was the nurse. The one who had held my hand just before I passed. And in that instant, I understood something profound, not with my mind, but with my being. Her sorrow echoed mine. The way I had grieved my husband. The guilt, the sense of failure, the crushing belief that I wasn't enough to save someone I loved. I could feel her pain inside me. It wasn't observation. It was participation. Her sorrow ran through me like a current. Her agony cracked open a chamber in my spirit I thought had long been sealed. And then came the choice. It wasn't forced. It wasn't asked. It was simply there, as clearly as the door had been moments before. I could stay, pass through that glowing threshold, be held in that infinite love forever. Finally rest, finally be whole. Or I could go back, return to a body that had been lifeless, return to a world that still bore wounds, return not out of obligation, but out of compassion. And I thought to myself, if this one soul, this woman who wept for me, could be spared even a portion of the pain I once carried, wouldn't that be enough? Wouldn't that be worth returning for? I lowered my hand, the one I hadn't realized I had raised toward the door, and as soon as I did, the entire vision, the entire dimension, the light, the love, the presence, it all collapsed in a single breath. There was no transition, no slow fade. It was just snap. And I was back. Back in the hospital. Back in the body. Back in the weight of flesh and heartbeat and gravity. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed faintly. Monitors beeped in scattered rhythms. I opened my eyes slowly, my lungs drawing in a breath that felt foreign, like I was borrowing air from someone else's world. Doctors hovered over me, wide-eyed. One of them whispered, almost reverently, "She's back." Another looked up at the clock. 10 minutes. No pulse, no oxygen. Then at me. "Can you hear me?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell them everything, about the velvet dark, the shimmering light, the nurse, the door, God. But all I could do was smile, because something inside me had changed. No, everything had changed. And what would happen next, in the days that followed, would not only confirm what I experienced, it would become a testimony of the impossible, a whisper of the eternal, returning in flesh. Because the woman who came back, she was no longer the same, and neither would be the world around her. Coming back felt like wearing clothes that no longer fit. My soul had expanded, stretched by light, pierced by truth, and now it was wrapped again in flesh that felt temporary. I could hear the world again. The sterile beeping of machines, the faint squeak of nurse shoes on polished floors, the soft murmurs of concern. But inside, everything was quiet, and not the kind of quiet that comes from absence. It was the quiet of completion, of something eternal that had settled deep inside me. A doctor leaned in, voice steady but unsure. "You've been dead for over 10 minutes, Ms. Pierce, but you're here, and your vitals are perfect." They ran test after test. I let them. Their curiosity didn't disturb me. I already knew what they would find. No signs of brain damage, no cardiac trauma, no lingering effects from the hemorrhage. And days later, in disbelief, they confirmed the cancer was gone. Not in remission, gone. As if it had never existed, as if something had rewritten the script of my cells while I was away. But the greatest miracle wasn't in the scans. It was in my heart. The weight I had carried for nearly 30 months, grief, guilt, the feeling of failure after my husband's death, had lifted. Not erased, healed, like a wound closed by gentle hands under a sun that never sets. I had crossed a line between life and death, and in doing so, I left behind more than a broken body. I left behind the belief that I was unworthy of joy. When I returned home, nothing looked the same. Not because the world had changed, but because I had. I sold the house, packed light, moved to the Midwest, where the horizon breathes wide and the silence is sacred. There, I began again. Every morning I wrote down 5 things I was grateful for. Sometimes it was just the wind through the cornfields. Other days, the fact that I'm still breathing. I stopped searching for meaning in the noise. Instead, I started listening for it in the stillness. And then, one night, the angels came back. It wasn't a dream. I was fully awake. They stood by my bed, not with wings or trumpets, but with a presence that turned the room into a sanctuary. They sang. Their voices were unlike anything on earth, part melody, part light. Every note felt like it was stitched into the fabric of my soul. Their song wasn't in English. It wasn't in words at all. It was in truth. And I wept. Not from sorrow, but from beauty. They told me, not with mouths, but with presence. This song is for your healing, your peace, your joy, and to thank you for choosing to come back. It was then that I truly understood something most people never realize in their lifetime. God does not just love us. He enjoys us. He delights in our laughter. He lingers in our moments of kindness. He watches us, not from a throne of judgment, but from the center of every breath we take, with affection. We don't have to earn divine love. We came from it, and one day, we'll return to it. But until then, we are invited to live in its echo, to bring a taste of heaven to this earth through grace, compassion, and courage. That's what I try to do now. With every conversation, with every prayer, with every broken thing I choose to see as beautiful. I was once a woman who begged God to end her story. Now I am a woman who wakes each morning and thanks Him for another chapter. If you felt something deep inside during this story, don't let it go. Subscribe to the channel, write your city below, and comment Amen so we can include you in our prayers. You are not alone, and you are deeply, irrevocably loved.